Hey folks, Jason Halfen here, the Technological Angler, and you're joining me on what is really my first inland trip of the year. Now normally, most years, and certainly that's the case this year too, I open the season down in the Mississippi River, spend a month or two chasing walleyes and perch depending on how the weather is and the river flows and things like that, and then pivot over for a little run over to Green Bay for some walleyes. And this year actually just got back from that trip and turned out to be all post-spawn walleyes because everything is so early this year, right? We've got a really early spring up here in the upper Midwest. Right now it's April 16th, I think. There are times when the lakes are still locked up in ice at this time. We're wondering if we're gonna have ice out in time for opener, and that's not the case this year. We've got water temperatures in the low 50s. The game plan for today is going to be shallow water, try to find as much warm water as we can with some cover, and spend some time chasing largemouth, right? Recently, Wisconsin allowed for catch and release bass fishing during the early part of the season, so that gives us another opportunity to go and chase some game fish during a time when most things are closed, at least on inland waters. And so come along, let's check it out and see how it goes. Well, in the spring, as you know, water temperature is everything. And so what we're gonna do today to start is to begin in the back of a real shallow, dark bottom bay. Side imaging is showing some stumps and some of last year's weeds that are still standing up here in little patches from spot to spot within the bay. We're gonna fish a chatterbait. Okay, so this is just a chatterbait with no skirt on it. I've just rigged it with a Z-Man soft plastic, and the idea is going to be to work around these stumps, and you can see behind me on the shoreline there's some laydowns over there. Pull it through the weeds and along the edges of the weeds and see if we can get something going in here. I mean, here the water temperature is around 50 degrees, 50, 51. Out there in the main lake it's a little bit colder. So on this nice bright sunny day, it should be pulling these fish in here into the shallow water, and we'll give it a go, see how it turns out. You got to remember the water's still really cold, and so the fish aren't going to run down a super fast moving bait. What I like about this chatterbait is that it makes a lot of commotion even when you're cranking it slow. And so as we move along here through this bay, the idea is going to be to kind of keep that chatterbait close to the bottom, not on the bottom. I don't want to dredge up the mud and junk like that, but I want to keep it relatively close to the bottom. And even when you're cranking it slow, you'll feel that bait pumping, working back and forth. That throws off a tremendous amount of vibration into the water and really gets their attention. The soft plastic's another important part of the deal. That Z-Man soft plastic, I really like that. It pairs perfectly with lakes like we're fishing today that's got a lot of northerns, walleyes, muskies in it, right? Those fish aren't going to be able to tear it up. And even beyond that, you know, just being able to catch multiple fish on one bait obviously saves you a little time in rigging, and certainly saves you some money in the long run too. One pack of those Z-Man baits can go a really long way. There's one. Now that one hit it right by the boat. It's a little northern, but it's just that kind of sign of life. Well, it's actually kind of a nicer one. You know, here in the spring, early spring, this is still the middle of April. Let's turn the boat around here. Middle of April, these fish are all still trying to find the warmest water possible. And that warmest water is going to be in the shallow water, of course. So here's that northern on the chatterbait. Nice little guy. So these fish are going to be shallow, and of course the predators are going to be shallow. The prey is going to be shallow too. That's why everybody's here trying to warm up, get that first meal of the year. This northern thought he was going to be having chatterbait for lunch, and he's wrong. Let's see if we can let my bait go. There we go. Nice guy. Obviously the general season's not open, so we'll let this guy go. There it goes. You know, anything that is a little bit different, anything that offers a little bit of cover can be just a gold mine in this early season shallow water. This little cove, this little bay has got a bit of a smorgasbord. It's got laydowns on the shore, it's got stumps that are out there in a little bit deeper water, it's got some weeds, some leftover weeds from last year. Obviously all of those things are gonna provide shelter to the bait fish that are starting to cram in here in this 50-degree water. Oh, there's one. Oh, nice. Just that slow retrieve, looks like another northern, just that slow retrieve with the chatterbait is really all it takes. This is a perfect example of a bait that you just chuck it out and wind it in and it works. And that's one of the really nice things about it. Another northern, about the same size as the last one. You know, chatterbait's a great, in that respect, look at that, how stretchy it is. That pike's not gonna get it. See? In that respect, that chatterbait is just a perfect beginner's bait because it's so easy to use, right? There's really no technique to it. Chuck it out and wind it in. Now, obviously, it's not exactly that easy. I'm paying real close attention to my retrieve speed, so I do it slow enough to, you know, sort of agree with this 50-degree water temperature. But put a trailer on there, chuck it out and wind it in, and that's a bait that just flat out works. It works here in the cold water period of the spring. We catch lots of fish with it in the fall. And then even in the summer, you know, when you get those fish on shallow grass flats that are just up there cruising around, trying to find a meal, you can just burn these baits with a real heavy chatterbait. Just crank it fast and it just drives the fish crazy. I really like it. Well, I think it's time for a little change of scenery. Caught a couple of fish. Not too excited about what we found back here. I guess we got a couple little hints about what might be happening in terms of the fish being in weeds rather than wood. So we'll try another soft, dark bottom bay. Look for some weeds, see what happens. Well, we're gonna work our way into another shallow protected area, something that's a little bit more out of the wind. Even just here as I come into the bay, I already noticed the water temperature is a little bit warmer. 52 degrees even in water that's a little deeper than where I was fishing before, and I think that's just because it's not getting the wind as much. Side imaging's got stumps everywhere. Lots of wood. There's wood visible above the surface. Probably knocked the paint off the skeg once or twice while I'm in here. But this is another place where a guy can look for some of these early season fish. All right, well, one bass in the stump field and about 1 million stumpy snags. So we'll keep working our way back in. The fish I caught was about as far in as I could go before I ran out of real estate in that particular piece of stumps, and so I'm gonna keep working my way back in. There's been a couple of guys working their way into the very back corner looking for bluegills and crappies and such, and if largies aren't back there, we might give that a try too. Pretty crazy to come in these little pockets in the spring. It's like they're their own little environment. I've already got some green lily pads coming to the surface in 3-4 feet of water, and it's April 16th, I think, today. Obviously, spring is accelerated all around the state, all around the upper Midwest this year, but this is something pretty crazy. Back in this little pocket that I'm working into, it's water temperatures 53, 54 degrees, warmer than I've seen anyplace else. Guessing that if we hang out here for a little while, we may even see them creep up as the afternoon goes on. It's just 1 o'clock right now. So we'll kind of putz around back here a little bit. We'll throw the chatterbait around and see if we can find some largemouth that are agreeable. There's one. Let's see what we got here. Oh, northern or musky. Northern. Funny, I just popped it off of the weed, and as soon as I popped it, he tackled it. Oh, broke my leader. It's all right, well, I'll have to dig that bait out of there before he goes back. So I'll just spot lock here so I don't drift through the rest of my zone, deal with this fish. Well, that pike kind of messed me up completely. So I'm gonna start with a little fresh leader. So just in case you're wondering what I'm fishing today is got a 30-pound braid, and that's going to a 20-pound fluorocarbon leader. I'm not really worried about stealthiness. The water's pretty turbid. I'm using an aggressive presentation, so I'm not really worried about taking advantage of fluorocarbon's ability to not spook the fish, right? Because fluorocarbon is way less visible underwater than monofilament, and obviously than even braid. But really what I like that fluorocarbon for when I'm fishing, really any bass style bait is that it's, way stiffer than braid, which means you're gonna have far fewer opportunities during the day for that lure to kind of get tangled up in your leader or your line as you're casting. It's not foolproof, but it certainly goes a long way towards making more casts count during the day, and that's what we're out here to do, right? Is make as many productive casts as we can, try to catch as many fish as we can. So now, got leader tied up and got my chatterbait ready to rock and roll, and let's see if there's anything else in this little pocket besides northerns. There's one. That feels like a nice fish. I don't think that's a northern. Not fighting like a northern anyway. Let's see. Oh no, that's exactly what we're looking for. Nice big largemouth. Wisconsin spring largemouth, love it. Come here, fella. There we go. On the chatterbait. Nice one. And you can see that I was really doing anything special there other than cast and retrieve. Oh, just missed another one back in there. Wind's kind of blowing against that shoreline, probably pooling a little bit more warm water. 54 degrees. So if we just take our time and don't run into any stumps to scare the fish away, we might do okay. Well, I think what I want to do, so I don't scare these fish, is rather than just patrol around with my Ultrex, I'm going to put the talon down. I'm here in 2-3 feet of water, and that way I can fish downwind of where I want to, of where my boat's position is. Right, downwind is kind of where my target casting zone is, and this way, if I put the talon down, I won't be in any danger of spooking those fish. Now we're ready to rock. So we're in about 4 feet of water, and my target zone is just downwind of me there, and with talon holding me in place, I don't have to worry about running up on those fish. I can just sit here and slowly and casually cast and bump off the stumps that are down there. See if we can get a couple more of these bass in the boat. Well, before we leave this little spot and move on and try to find some more bass, I wanted to fire up the Mega 360 and take a closer look at what's going on here on the bottom, kind of all around us. Now note I've got the range set to 100 feet, so that's a 100-foot radius, right? So I'm looking at 200 feet from side to side here on my 360 imaging view. First thing I'll point out are the large prominent sonar returns, some of which are close to the boat and some of which are a little farther away, that have the long dark stripes kind of leading away from them. Well, those large prominent sonar returns, those are stumps, right? Those are the stumps that are sitting here in this little dark bottom bay, and the dark lines, the dark stripes leading away from them, those are the stumps' sonar shadows, right? That's an area on the bottom that the 360 imaging beam can't see because it's being blocked by that big tall stump. Now, a long sonar shadow means a tall stump, and a shorter sonar shadow means a stump that is just coming off the bottom a little bit. Now, around the edges of the 360 view, you'll see some weeds, right? These are some emergent or maybe some leftover weeds from last year that are kind of scattered around this hole that's in the middle of this bay. Now, this hole is, as you can see, almost 6 feet deep without a lot of vegetation in it, right? So it's a kind of a clean little depression with some weeds and some stumps that are all around it. And here, as we get into the heat of the afternoon, 2:30 in the afternoon, we've got 55-degree water temperature in here.
Oh, nice one.
Well, before we go, I want to go through the tools we're using today. Every cast I made was with a chatterbait, so I used 3/8 and 1/2 ounce chatterbaits. One of the ones I started with was just the undressed one. Okay, so the blade and the head of the chatterbait, but no skirt on it. I hung that one up on a log, so I lost it. I switched over to one with a skirt, and I caught fish on that too. I used white and kind of these bluegill colored trailers on the chatterbait. As I said before, great cold water bait, early season, later into the fall, and you can catch fish on them all summer too. And so this is a great choice for fishing early, these early season largemouth. I was throwing a St. Croix Legend glass, casting with a St. Croix Legend glass. This is a Shimano Corrado DC 150 reel. I've got 30-pound braid. I've got a 20-pound fluorocarbon leader. You saw the importance of using Humminbird side imaging, right, to find pieces of the shallow water that had cover in it. The key pieces of cover, since the weeds are just starting to come up, were some remnant weeds, and then lots of wood as well to hold these fish. Remember, that wood's gonna kind of hold that heat from the sun, make the surrounding water a little warmer. We also use 360 imaging to kind of get a all-around view of what was going on in some of our most productive areas and see the individual stumps, see the weed lines and things like that. So I hope these tips kind of get you guys going in the right direction if you're going out for some early season largemouth, no matter where you live in the country. If you have any questions, hey, go ahead and leave a comment below. We'll get right to it. If you're not a subscriber, make sure you hit that subscribe and like button. I'm Jason Halfen. I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time.